to our camp. I am an artificer, and anybody know what an artificer is? Anybody got a guess? Somebody that makes stuff. More what? A blacksmith is one of the artificers, and I've heard both terms or both ways of pronouncing it: artificers or artificers. Tomato, whatever. But artificers are skilled tradesmen, and they're very important to the military. And not only did we have people shooting and guns, and we needed cooks and all kinds of individuals to make the military move. One of the areas was the skilled trades, and it was more than just the blacksmiths. I'm going to focus a lot on the blacksmiths, but you can take in all of the different skilled trades that would be part of the military, and those would be I'll talk about those in just a second. But why would the skilled trades be needed? Why would I need to be here in a military camp?
Stuff breaks.
Stuff breaks, make stuff, yeah. So more fixing than making, really, because it would be like really difficult to take all of the materials that I would need to make stuff. It would just be literally tons of stuff with blacksmithing. So we did a lot of fixing of stuff. Things break, and one of the events that we went to a couple summers ago, we went up to Fort Erie in Canada, and as soon as I pulled in, I didn't even get out of my truck, and the leadership came over and she's like, "How quickly can you get the forge fired up?" And I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "Well, we lost one of the pins that holds the barrel onto the cannon cartridge. So I had to fix something." The problem was the part that we needed to fix or replace was about the size of my thumb, and about the biggest stock that I had was this stock right here. This is 3/8 inch stock, and as you can see, it's a lot smaller. So one of the skills with the blacksmith is to be able to compress the metal and make it fatter. You heat up one little spot and you blob it, basically. So I was able to fix it, but that really was the purpose of the blacksmith. So we have here, this is a Revolutionary War era cart, which is appropriate because we kind of got a mix of Rev and 1812. But I am an 1812, I'm part of the 1812 group, and I am their blacksmith. And we are working on correcting this faux pas, and this is actually a model of the cart that we will be working on transforming this into. This is what they had in 1812. It's a little bit different if you can see. Basically, this would fit onto this, which is a limber for the cannon. So it was interchangeable parts, whereas this is more designed to be pulled by a single horse or mule. So, actually mules I don't think were around. A four-legged critter that would carry them. So this is a cart, it can move, and it goes with the artillery. Now I'm part of the Quartermaster Corps, and we are assigned to different units. And so the Quartermaster would look at a unit and say, okay, you guys need 2 blacksmiths, and you need a cooper. Who knows what a cooper is?
Barrels.
Makes barrels, exactly. Yeah, barrels are extremely important because they would hold lots of different things. They would hold beer, they would hold nails, they would hold crackers, bread, whatever, flour, anything. So barrels were the cardboard boxes of the times, as well as we had wood boxes. There were pewterers. Pewterers make our buttons. A tinsmith. Tinsmith's making all the cups and everything like that. So all of those things needed to be fixed and taken care of because the military would be sometimes 3-4 weeks away from a supply chain. So the tradesmen were very important. Now, I am part of the military, but do I look like I'm part of the military? Not really. This is the great part about my role, is I'm part of the military, but I don't have to drill, I don't have duties, I don't have to march. I do what I like to do, which is pound metal and make things. But here's the best part. I get paid quite well. Through my research, I found that the blacksmiths and the skilled tradesmen were paid the equivalent of the officers level. So lieutenants and captains, they were getting upwards of $30 a month, which is pretty good pay. An assistant blacksmith, one was paid $16 a month, which is pretty darn good. The other benefit that we got was we got 1.5 rations per day. No matter what skilled trades you were, whether you were the lowest of low on the skilled trades or if you were the highest one, everybody got 1.5 rations per day. And that was a pretty good thing. And so because I got paid well and because I got 1.5 rations, I also had my wife along with me. And that was pretty common for camp followers. Camp followers were the wives of many of the officers. They were ones that did work for people. So there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Now, in this camp, we're kind of set up as the military is. We have the lower ranks towards the front, and then the officers, and then the commander. Well, you go back that way a little bit further, and then you'd start to have the skilled trades, and then you'd start to have the kitchens and all that. So they were beyond that way. They weren't technically part of this military, but we were in the camp, and we were available to be fixing things. Now, another thing that we found out or thought about in terms of this fort with the skilled trades is we probably wouldn't have the forge here. What does blacksmithing need?
Wood.
Wood, fuel, yep. What else?
Water.
Water, exactly, yeah. I don't want to walk down there and cart that up. So you're near the river, so a lot of the skilled trades would be probably down in those bottomlands over there. That's where they did meat processing. They did other tanning and things like that. So pretty much the military was a self-sufficient thing.
So for this location, you would have been first under attack then if it was a surprise.
Possibly, yeah.
Because the British were over there.
Yeah, right. But you want to be where your materials are, yeah. And speaking of materials, we talked about wood being something. There's documentation where they clear cut basically a mile out that way, and they turn those trees into charcoal. Well, that's what I'm burning here today. You would have a hard time getting coal all the way up here. It could happen, but it would be very, very expensive, and it'd be very difficult to get it there. So it's just a lot easier. Cut down a bunch of trees, turn it into charcoal, and make your fire out of charcoal. Now the problem with that is that charcoal's a little bit harder to get to a higher heat, and you also notice that I've got a fireworks show going on here. That is one of the downsides to using charcoal, is it sparks up a lot. So it takes a little bit more fuel to heat up the metal. But it's what we have, so that's what we're going to use. I'm going to work on a little project while I'm talking as well, and feel free to ask questions or make comments or whatever along the way. Some of the things that I make, I have all of my materials over here out for display as well as for purchase, but those things that I make that we use in camp, you see a lot of stuff, ironwork around here. We have tent hooks, things to hang things, lanterns. I'm fixing tools, I'm making S-hooks. I've got rope poles here. We got tent stakes, very, very important to make tent stakes. I make a lot of those.
Who made the ropes?
We're making pretty much and fixing pretty much anything that's here in camp that's made out of iron.
For the artisans, who made the rope?
Who made the rope? Rope would probably not be made in camp, but you would be at rope walks. So that again is another skilled trade. Those would be really, really long buildings in some industrial centers. So your seaports a lot of times made a lot of the ropes because they need a lot of ropes for the ships. And a rope walk is basically like a 100-yard long building, and they put the strands, the fibers, either hemp or sisal, and then they would string it up, and they would turn a crank, and it would twist the rope and turn it into rope. And they did it long pieces because you don't really splice together pieces of rope for long spools. Yeah. Another skilled trade. Within the blacksmith field, really popular right now is bladesmithing because of a show that I won't mention because I'm not a big fan of it. But yeah, that we had bladesmiths, we had armorers. Bladesmiths make anything that's sharp. Armorers are going to do really anything that is needed to make like armor or shields. We also have gunsmiths and farriers. That's a question I get a lot. It used to be when I first got into the blacksmithing, everybody was asking me how many horses have I shoed. The number is 0. That was 10 years ago. The number is still 0. But as a blacksmith or general blacksmith, I would be taking care of the farrier work. But 200 years ago, farriers were not just putting shoes on horses. Farriers were kind of the vets of the time period. They took care of the animal from head to tail. Not only putting the shoes on, but they would also look at the health of it. So that's a subset of blacksmithing. And then general blacksmithing, which is what I do, is make all these tools and all these kinds of things. So let's get something started here.
Did you ever make scissors or surgeon's tools?
I have not, but that certainly would be something that could be made. For surgeon's tools, you'd need something that's really, really sharp. Which brings me into, it's a fluid talk here, I guess. So one of the things that I guess is a myth with blacksmiths, what do you guys know of blacksmiths from TV or movies?
They make the armor.
Okay.
Well, they did. They never recruited in because they had to secret skills.
Okay. But what vision? If everybody picture a blacksmith in a movie that you've seen.
Sharpening the plowshare.
There you go. You don't really see blacksmiths in movies and TV, do you? But if you do, it's a muscle, big dumb brute, right? Yeah, we're not. We are metallurgists. We are middle class. I am highly regarded in the community. Don't make me mad, because if I do, if you can make me mad, that S-hook over there is going to cost you 3 times as much, and I can do that. But we have a knowledge of metallurgy. So going back to your comment about like surgeon's tools, we know by looking at the metal how hard it is. We can make it hardened. We can look at it and we can make it sharper because we know how to harden it. And knowing the temperature of things is really important. So we are not big dumb brute. We are within the realm of looking at metals and saying, okay, I know that if I do this to the metal, if I put it in the water at this temperature, it's going to do this to the metal. And if I change the temperature, and right now, this is hard to see, but, and that's why I have a darker tarp here. So this is a dark cherry, and that's about 900 degrees. And if I heat it back up, actually I could take a look at this one, which is a little bit brighter of red. That's about 1,000 degrees. My fire, I can get this one about 1,600 degrees. If I was using bituminous coal, blacksmithing coal, I could get it up to 2,000 degrees. And 2,000 degrees is a point at which we are burning metal. And all of that is just experience and knowledge by using this equipment and looking at the fire. Now I've got this glowing, nice, bright orange. So I'm getting closer, 1,500 degrees. Now I could pound on that metal that was dark cherry, but the problem is that it's not malleable. Anybody know what malleable means?
You can bend it, smash
Something that can be bent, can be smashed, yes. So it's like Play-Doh. So we want that metal to be more malleable so that we can move it around to what we want. So there we have something that's in the range of 1500 degrees. I'm going to keep it here in the heat because we want to strike while the iron's hot. So I'm going to prepare myself. That is a blacksmithing term. Of course, that's sometimes lost on kids today. You guys are probably like, what? All right. So this stuff here is called scale. Did you guys notice that that bent when I was just moving that? All right, so I'm going to put a twist in this, and I'm going to use my twisting fork. Now I did this once. Lady in the audience, she was like, "Wow. Now does that make that stronger, or is that, you know, what's the purpose of a twist?" I said I could charge you twice as much. She chuckled just like that, and I was like, "No, seriously."
Decorative.
It's decorative, yeah, and you know, that took me time, didn't it? Time is money. But there is a purpose. There could be a purpose. What would a purpose of a twist be? Think about things that are useful that have twists in them.
You could screw the tent straight into the ground.
Yeah. I made the mistake once of putting a twist in a tent stake because I thought, oh wow, this looks really cool. This is nice. Yeah, and then I started to pound it in, and as soon as it hit that turn, it just started twisting like that. Yeah, not a good thing. But it does. I mean, it's a screw.
Right.
Yeah. So that concept of making a twist is a screw. But for what I'm making right now, which is an S-hook, it's just decorative. It looks nice. Because, you know, we don't want things to be just utilitarian. We want them to be nice. We want them to look good.
How did you learn your trade? How did you learn your trade, and how long did it take to become like a journeyman or a master?
Me in real life or in 1812? Yeah. So yeah, you would be apprenticed to a blacksmith. You'd go through and you could finish out at journeyman. Journeyman is like you're an accomplished individual. You've got the skills, but you wouldn't break out on your own. So journeyman would work for, you know, like factories, for bigger forges, work underneath a master. And there were journeymen that were employed by the military. So you would have a master.
When did you start? Were you like their age or younger, or did it vary?
It varies. The classic British system of tradesmen was about 7 years old. But one of the issues that we had, one of the reasons why we became an independent nation, is because of the skilled trades. England tried to control everything. And so they wanted raw materials to be sent over to England. They processed them to be sent back over to be made into stuff. And then, you know, there's a little bit of control there. So that's why we kind of broke away from that. All right. So now I've got this. One of the basic skills is to create a taper. So as a blacksmith, you get all your basic skills down in your first year, basically. You're just doing a lot of basic work. And so going back to modern times, you know, I have young people that come up and they're like, oh, they've watched that show and they want to jump into making a blade or something. Like, oh, I want to do this. I want to be a blacksmith. And I'm like, okay, how many S-hooks have you made? Same number of horses that I've shoed, 0. And I'm like, well, you really need to get the skills down. And that's really what it's about, is getting our skills down and practicing and getting things to muscle memory. And so going back to the question about journeyman and the amount of training, generally is about 7 to 10 years, depending on your skill level. And then the master would work on their masterpiece, and their masterpiece was like basically the thesis or the PhD of what they knew. But you don't have to do that to be, journeyman and be skilled and accomplished. I myself am very happy for a thing we call YouTube and talking with folks. So anytime I'm out and about, I talk to other blacksmiths. I look at things and I analyze how it was made and just practice. I've been doing this for 10 years. For about the past 6, it's been in this role as with the military, with the artillery group here. But it's self-taught, and that's ultimately, once you get your basic skills down, your tapers and your scrolls and your twists and things like that, all those basic skills, you just start adding those in together. And if you look at any of the work here, all of them have a variety of different things to make them. So, for example, this is a keg holder. We have scrolls here, we have twists, we have bending, we have flattening, and it's just a combination of all those different skills put together. Same thing with this J hook right here. Here's a little scroll here. For this, I decided to create a leaf. So again, it's just flattening, it's shaping, it's just looking at the metal and figuring out how I want to move it around. And it's knowing when to strike the iron while it's hot.
Who made the files?
So there was another subset of basic blacksmithing. It'd be tool makers, bladesmiths, because you're making something that's sharp. One of the fallacies and myths I often try to dispel is that files were turned into knives. Really, that may have occurred, and there are some extant examples of that. But, if this hammer gets a little worn, am I going to throw it away and turn it into something else? No, because it's an expensive tool. So we'd grind it down, shape it a little bit, refix it, and then it would be a brand new hammer. Same thing with a pair of tongs or something along those lines. Files, you just send them back, get them resharpened. So I've had that argument with a lot of people that say, oh well, files were turned into knives. Yeah, sort of. Another myth and fallacy was that they burned cabins down for nails. Nails are cheap. By the time you burn a cabin down to get the nails, they'd be worthless. They'd be melted and just no point to it. All right. Bye.
Well, then put your favorite cheese on the sandwiches.
Questions? I've kind of gone through my spiel.
What was an average workday for blacksmith? Like how many hours? When did you start? When did you stop? Weather?
Most
all
of the
that kind
day.
Stuff. Did you work when it rained? When it snowed?
one of the things that's kind of difficult to pull out is
Just
like
that kind of
just
stuff.
that kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly. So you know, you're looking at first-hand accounts, and you know, nobody. I mean, how many
Well,
of
it
you guys?
seems like it'd be pretty brutal at times to try
It-
to even do the
It could be.
trade.
Yeah. So from
Well, you're the skilled guy. What happens if you get hurt? Say,
that's why we would not be hitting. You know,
just working.
We're not
you know,
firing
maybe
on-
you burn
you know.
yourself, or you hit your fingers, or something happens. That would
you
really
work
put
through
a
it,
kink
really.
in things, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
For the military.
Yeah. Yeah.
So would
well,
they, my question adding on to that would then would be, or comment is that they would often employ more than one, maybe
Yeah.
2, 3, 4 blacksmiths,
yes.
depending on the size of the contingent, right?
Most, yes, and it was dependent on the size of the unit, what they had in that unit. You know, so maybe a smaller artillery company would only have one blacksmith, whereas a larger
Well, and if
company.
you had multiples, they probably had, like, you would be selectively doing one thing. The next guy would be selectively doing one thing, right?
There would not be two masters.
Okay.
So everything that I have found, and a lot of this information is pulled out of the pay stubs, the pay receipts. So that's how you find out how much they were paid, how many were there. So what I found was that there were masters and then there was a journeyman. And so there may be a couple of journeymen working for that master.
So, like in this setup right here, would it be typical you would work by yourself, or would you have 2, 3 other people helping you, organizing things, getting you things, you know,
Depends on what was needed
doing
to be
things
done.
for you, whatever?
Yeah, so you know, if there's a lot of work to be
Yeah,
done,
but
then
what was typical though? Work by yourself?
yeah, you know, you're talking about like a day to day. You know, you're talking 16, 17 hours of daylight.
Right.
You'd be working as long as there was stuff to be done. You know, if you got 400 people in this unit, that's a lot of stuff to be fixed. And, you know, you think about every one of them has, you know,
Something.
hooks or something, you know, tent pegs or
And
things
just
to be
their
fixed.
guns.
Yeah, and guns. I mean, yeah. So things need to be fixed. We're going to be working.
So did you fix the guns, the muskets, or did somebody else do that?
So this is where by 1812 they're starting to get more interchangeable items. You know, all the guns are pretty much the same as opposed to, you know, in the Revolutionary War, you know, everybody just say, hey, I got my gun, you know, and it was not the same as the next guy. Now we're starting to make things that are standardized, and that's why why we are going to the different forges, because this is a standardized forge. It uses the same limber as the cannon, as the supply carts. So if that got destroyed, you could just swap that in. Same with a lot of the other parts. But somebody's, you know, I've had people come up to me at events and they're like, hey, can you re-harden a frizzen? Frizzen is the metal piece that the flint strikes to create the spark to go into the gun and fire it. They've asked me, can you re-harden it? I've had people come up and, hey, I need a turn screw. And a turn screw is, you know, just the tool to tighten the screws on their gun.
What about keys? Blacksmith key makers?
Like
skeleton
lock and
keys?
keys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was a specialty trade or not.
It's really that not a.
Oh, there's a deer right there. Look, everyone. Check that out.
It's a baby.
That's a little baby. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's all right.
Mama won't be too far away. They're becoming too tame.
I live in downtown Worthington.
Where?
Worthington, north side of Columbus, and we got a deer problem.
Yeah. We used to call it around here about 4 years ago.
We need to thin the herd, really. We got an 8-point buck that's wandering around in town.
If you guys were real vital and you weren't in the base camp, you said, would the enemy often like send people around
Yeah,
to target
so like if this wasn't a fort, if this was, you know,
Open.
Open field, yeah, that would be facing the enemy, and then your infantry, your lower ranks are first, and then your junior officers, and then the officers, and then the commander, and then the skilled trades, and then the kitchens.
So you're in the rear, as they
Yes.
said.
Yes.
And there is an etiquette to all that.
Yes. Yeah.
Somebody earlier said something about you being the first to be attacked. I think this lady said it.
Well, if he was down by the
Right,
river
actually, right. So actually,
and off by himself more or less,
right.
he would be vulnerable
Well, what
here because of this, the topography and where the enemy.
But this is in a
Sure.
fort. Yeah.
So how many blacksmiths did they have when Fort Meigs was in its heyday?
We can't find documentation on that. As
Probably
much as they documented a lot of stuff, the rosters that we have copies of are a little vague on that.
Isn't that because a lot of the destruction that went on here? I mean, the fort was destroyed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So some things were lost.
Right, this is all modern reconstruction.
Right. Right. I would give a strong guess that they still use the forge cart because the fort really was not supposed to be a permanent fort. It was supposed to be just a temporary fort. So why would you build a smithy if you're not intending to be here for very long? And the artillery. I mean, the artillery was a mobile unit, so you'd be bringing this in.
Well, plus this fort in particular, there were a lot more buildings in here originally than there's standing now that no longer exist.
They all stayed in tents. Even Harrison stayed in tents.
But there were more buildings.
Right.
I've seen the drawing of it.
But I don't know whether they actually had a smithy. I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to make one, but at the same time, this is not that hard either. If you had to go,
I don't know if you hear this very often, but I just want to say that, I'm glad that you do this because it's living history, and I appreciate it.
this is what I enjoy. I mean, and I appreciate hearing those comments because
You're not doing this just to hang out. I mean, you're doing this because you enjoy it.
I do. And a couple weeks ago, we were in Auglaize Village doing an event, and all I did all weekend long was make stuff. So people came up, other reenactors, and they were, I was providing a service.
I'm sure you've heard of Greenfield Village. Have you ever been up there doing anything?
I have not been to there,
It's
but I have
amazing. You should go.
Yeah.
It's worth it to go. But what they have there is it's unbelievable what they have there really in general. You think all Ford Museum, it's way more than just all the different artisans and the actual historical buildings they've moved there, and they talk about blacksmithing and different things there. So they actually have Abraham Lincoln's chair there that he was shot in. The actual chair he was sitting in
Really?
was shot, yeah. And the courthouse he practiced law in.
all that practice. You think you get it right?
Yeah.